Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have with us today a distinguished panel of experts who will be sharing their insights and perspectives on one of the hottest topics in academia at the moment, ChatGPT. Our panelists bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and I am confident that their discussion will be both informative and thought-provoking. We begin with Dr. Sami Bashir Majri, Manager, Pedagogical Enhancements at Khalifa University at Abu Dhabi, who will be moderating our discussion today. We also have Professor Robert Studholm, Lecturer at the School of Humanities, Arts and Applied Sciences at Amity University, Dubai, and Dr. Zainab Rashid, Director of Academic Strategy and International Relations at Hertfordshire Graduate School, and our very own Dr. Kristen Hyland, Assistant Professor of English, College of Arts and Sciences at the American University of Sharjah. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists, and let's get ready for a lively and engaging discussion.
Okay. Welcome and thank you. ChatGPT has become a catchphrase in popular and scholarly discourses over the last few months. It has taken the world by storm, first after the initial release on November 30th, 2022, reaching 1 million users in 5 days and 100 million in 2 months. Then after unveiling the GPT-4, producing ChatGPT Plus on March 14, 2023, it led to many companies like Microsoft and Google to rush into creating similar products or tools. So, needless to say, this topic fits well within the conference and must definitely be discussed here. So the organizers have assembled an expert of group panelists here, as mentioned previously from Khalifa University, AUS. And so we'll begin with Mr. Bob. In the world of education, was ChatGPT something different or yet another technology tool in teaching? Does it forces us, educators and administrators, to address it in any way particular? And so some ground rules, we have 4 minutes each panelist, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end.
Thank you very much. I hope the technology is working and everybody can hear me. Great. ChatGPT, should we be concerned? Well, I think I'm probably not alone in knowing that Geoffrey Hinton, the so-called godfather of AI, recently resigned and now regrets every part of his role in developing. This, by the way, is somebody I'd never heard of before I saw the headline. I think he deals with the tools and is worried about the way that people use them. I, on the other hand, deal with young people and see how they use tools. So I think I'm a bit more optimistic about this. Now, if you don't mind, I'll start with a quote. Sorry, I classroom teacher, I'm used to standing up and bouncing around. I might wiggle in my seat a bit. A quote from one of my favorite writers, Neil Gaiman, who once said, "Google can bring you back 10,000 answers to your question. A librarian will bring you back the right one." Now, ChatGPT is nowhere near being a librarian. It's wiser than Google, which is damning with very faint praise, but it's not wise yet. That, however, I think is not really the big question, because how you got your answer was never the relevant part. It's what use did you make of that answer? Now, by way of illustration, when my daughter was about 5 years old, she loved writing books. She would dictate the stories to me. I would write them in my best handwriting. She would then illustrate them, would staple them together. She was a prolific book writer. All of her stories involved mermaids, princes, princesses, and each and every one began once upon a time. Nobody yelled plagiarism. Nobody talked about hackneyed, cliched, tired old tropes. You know, we accept that's the thing. All of the conference papers today will start with an abstract, and nobody's going to be saying, "Oh my God, have these people got no originality?" We understand that's the format, that's the way you do it. Now, my daughter's last piece of writing that she shared with me was a description of a dissociative incident suffered by somebody who was going through anxiety, stress, and marijuana use. riveting piece of writing, no mermaids, and did not begin with Once Upon a Time. I think she's outgrown that phase. She's used the information that the librarians brought to her very well. And she's not the only one. The Bronte sisters, when they were young, used to write little books using their father's monthly magazines as sources for the locations and the characters. After the death of the poet Lord Byron, characters like Lord Byron used to appear inside their little books. And they didn't do what my daughter did and get rid of those. They turned them into Mr. Rochester and Heathcliff, like mermaids with black belts. I think we all understand this is how people grow, how they develop, and how they get into a higher level of things. Now, recently with my students, I got them talking about ChatGPT, and we all know you can use it to cheat. My colleague, Dr. Jehan, will talk this afternoon about some of the things we've seen which are more positive, but I wanted to show them that, yes, it can do the work for you. And we talked about BuzzFeed and how they've laid off 12% of their workforce because they're going to get ChatGPT to write rubbish articles for them very cheaply, and said, could it write an email to your PL asking for time off because of a family emergency? Yeah, 30 seconds, beautiful. Is that the best answer? And they're all looking at me like, what do you mean? So I said, who are your favorite authors? Oh, J.K. Rowling. Right, please rewrite this email in the style of J.K. Rowling. Well, it referenced dragons, so we decided we're not going there. Who else? Lee Child, author of Reacher books. No, a bit too casual. We're not doing that. John Green. Ooh, interesting. They like John Green. I tried Ernest Hemingway and Shakespeare. Ernest Hemingway, family emergency, taking leave. Thanks. Little bit too succinct on that one. I think, though, that students who are exposed to a lot, the librarian is bringing them a lot of good answers, are going to learn. Not all of them, admittedly. I once proctored on a maths exam. Now, nobody goes into a maths exam or a place where they need to do calculations without taking their calculator. One student, however, called me over and said, where's the Y? Sorry? Where's the Y? I don't understand. What do you want? And he pointed at the question on the paper. 5x plus 2y equals 54. A, x equals. B, y equals. He'd found the 5, he'd found an x, he'd found an equals, he'd found a 2. There's no y on this calculator. How do you solve that problem without a y on the calculator? Not everybody is good at using tools. They never have been. Some of them will use this tool very, very well, and they will operate at a much higher level than they would ever have been able to before. Some of them will just keep on plodding on, turning out the same old rubbish that they've always done. I don't think that it is a new thing. I think it's very much what the French say. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And that, for me, I think is my 4 minutes.
Well said. Thank you, Professor Robert, for the insightful information about ChatGPT. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kristen here. Past the initial bewildered reactions, have educators like yourself found ways to use ChatGPT in ways that facilitate learning in different ways, collaborative, project-based, etc.?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. So ChatGPT, as we know, is just, it's one of the many and increasingly populous AI generation tools. That's for text, right? There's image tools, there's audio, there's video tools. And I think every discipline is going to have different concerns and different uses for these tools. I'm in literary studies and writing, and I think arguably one of the disciplines most impacted by ChatGPT and text generation, I'd say computer programming and business are right up there as well. And I think for me and for us, I don't see necessarily the impact or the potential of ChatGPT for collaboration or project-based learning so much. Honestly, there are better tools out there to facilitate that type of work. But what I do see is the potential for ChatGPT to help students or to work best as a composing tool to help students engage with writing as a process, to engage with the thinking and the learning that is what writing is. And I know that sounds counterintuitive because our big concern is like, oh, no, ChatGPT is short-circuiting process. We're skipping process and going right to product. And when it's used poorly, yes, and that's when we have academic integrity issues, of course. But I think in order to bring process back into it, one of the first things that we have to do, we have to teach students what this tool is. Not even how to use it. Right? We can't get to how to use it if they don't know exactly sort of what it is. And you don't need to be an expert in it. All we need to say is that ChatGPT and AI text generation in general they're built off of large language models, LLMs. LLMs are statistical models. That's what they do. Trained on a huge corpus of digital text, they predict the next most likely words. They're not thinking, it's probability, it's predicting. So knowing that that's the logic of the tool, then we can start saying, okay, how is the best place to use this? And when we're thinking about writing, it comes in those places where probability, where predictions, where patterns are most helpful. And for us, or at least for me, I found that to be in the beginning processes of writing, in brainstorming, where we're interested in patterns, when we're asking for potential topics, potential research questions, when we're thinking about what are the possibilities of organizing this essay. Patterns work really well then. Patterns work less well when we're saying, how do I analyze this evidence? How do I critique this text? How do I come up, right, with my own take on this? It can't do that well. And that's when we see, this is not good writing, there's no depth here, right? But that's because students don't know what they're working with and they don't know how to use the tool. So we have to teach what that is, right? Like I said, the logics of it and then how to use it. And I'd say, as I wrap up here too, that we have to get away from thinking of, and I'm saying this in education, I think other business after education might be a lost cause in some ways, but we have to get away from this obsession with productivity. ChatGPT is not about, and AI generation should not be about increasing productivity. And in education specifically, it should be about engaging with using it in conversation, to use your word before, in conversation with the messy intellectual work of writing, the feedback, the reflection, the revision, and we can do it that way. And I will say that it's coming, right? Office 365 is right now beta testing an AI function for all Office applications, which I know we all use and all of our students use. They're beta testing that. That's going to be out imminently. And just like spell check, just like thesaurus, it will become integrated into how we use things. So our job has to be how to teach these students, what are these models doing? How are they working? How can I best use them for my purposes? When should I use them? When shouldn't I use them? So I think in a lot of ways, now I've gotten really urgent all of a sudden. I'm like, we have to do this now. But I do think we're on that up curve now, and now's the time to be teaching them what these things are. Because like you said, and I think we can help the students. That I don't think that our students will never be able to use the tools. But if we don't teach them how to use them, then we're gonna, that's the old computer programming saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like we have to teach them how to use some of these things by teaching them the logics of it.
Thank you so much. That was insightful. The next question was intended for me, and it's about the inclusion and how can you embed ChatGPT into academic spheres. And what I will say is this: I think that we are riding a wave of disruption, similar to what Dr. Maria had mentioned in the morning. We've had several waves over the last few decades, beginning with the rise of the network society in the 1990s. All the way to the MOOCs, the massive open online courses. And we thought 10 years ago that MOOCs is going to revolutionize the way we do academic delivery, and that a lot of institutions are going to shut down their doors and everyone is going to be studying large virtual lecture halls of thousands of students. Did that happen? Not so much. But what it did happen with MOOCs, in light of MOOCs, it created a platform for Ivy League institutions like Yale and Harvard and Princeton to deliver quality education to the masses. And so in today's digital age, we are using large classrooms or MOOCs to deliver these micro-credentials and upskilling and many of the tools and techniques that employers recommend for someone who already earned a degree. And I think this wave of disruption that we're seeing with ChatGPT will also take its course. I don't believe that it's going to shut down schools. I don't think it's going to change the nature, the role of the educator, the learner, and the environment in which they interact. It will, but I think there will be an equilibrium based on the negative and the shortcomings of ChatGPT that were discussed in the morning right now in the panel. I do see a potential for ChatGPT in changing or enhancing the way we deliver content. So in medical education, it could be a tool for medical students to generate perhaps case studies and scenarios about diabetes, mental health care. And it could be, if you remember a few years ago, the H1N1 virus and most recently the pandemic, people were looking for information about how to handle the virus. I remember washing the grocery in my garage. We didn't know what to do. So ChatGPT for future potential disruption, for future, whether it's human conflict or emergency situations, ChatGPT or AI-powered tools could help us or enhance our lives. We know that healthcare, for example, the cost of healthcare is rising, the cost of education, and so ChatGPT could play a significant role in enhancing professors with providing instantaneous feedback to students. And the examples of how ChatGPT can be incorporated are limitless. So, but it's a wave of disruption, and we just have to ride this wave and see through it, see the positive, the advantages, and the disadvantages. Some countries, some institutions have decided to ban it altogether. I think seeing the positive and the negative is worthwhile. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Zainab. How can ChatGPT be used to support teacher professional development? And what are challenges and opportunities for using ChatGPT in that aim?
Thank you very much, Dr. Sami. Please excuse my sore throat. I will try my best to keep it low, my voice. Before I start with this topic, I just want to give you a slight background on my history. I am basically a computer science person and moved into academia, and my doctorate is in higher education. But still, I am a very passionate person when it comes to computer science, AI, and these fields. Your question is very interesting, how it can help in the development of the faculty members. I agree with majority of the scholars in this room who had already been discussing the technology and who are basically sitting with me also. AI is just a tool. It is not a replacement, and it's not a necessary tool to be used. It needs to be thought of as a tool which we may or may not require for our personal development or for our courses. In Hertfordshire Graduate School, where I'm working, as of academic strategy person, I invoke ChatGPT, you can say 10 to 20 times daily for one or the other reason. And the reasons are because I understand somehow the algorithm of ChatGPT. Now, when we are talking about our faculty members, there is a lot of resistance in adapting to this new tool, though it's not compulsory for them to use it at all. It's not necessary for you to learn. It's not necessary for you to use unless it's a requirement for the course, or it's a requirement. For example, you need to teach the students how to use ChatGPT. That's where you require it. So it's more of like Microsoft applications. It's just a tool. So instead of giving a pressure to our faculty members, we have mentioned that it's an optional tool. You want to learn, you can come forward for it. Now, when we are teaching them ChatGPT, telling them how to use the prompts and how to define the prompts, we tell them a bit of background of how the ChatGPT is functioning or thinking. The algorithm which is used for ChatGPT, it is an excellent tool, I'd say, if you give it a structure and then you give it a content and ask ChatGPT to evaluate that content based on that structure. Now, this can be used by the faculty members to audit their own courses based on accreditation requirements, audit their content, audit their teaching material, audit their, so once a structure is given to ChatGPT, again, we have a limit of the words. It can generate a specific kind of content. It can tell you the areas, the new research areas which are coming in that specific topic. However, using ChatGPT that often, I have also seen, now I'm telling about the challenges and opportunities together, hand by hand. I have seen that it has a vast amount of information which it can give about any certain given specific topic. However, we cannot expect at all in any way or form, whatever kind of a prompt I'm giving it to ChatGPT, to be creative or be innovative in any specific aspect. It cannot give you a nuanced or a context-specific information, though it has the vast amount of information, all kind of websites it's giving you. This, we have felt it when we were generating the course material for certain IT-based topics, and again, AI-based topics itself. I can't go in more details in it. However, when it comes to generating some descriptive text, it is good. But if you are, there is also a topic that it can help the faculty members in doing their research. Please do not rely on the information given by the ChatGPT. Do not. Even the articles which are generated, the names of the people which are generated, it's not they're outdated. They are just completely nonsense. Do not even go for verification. It's a total waste of time. So the information which is given, we can't rely on it. Rely on Google for that one. If you want to generate a descriptive text, some course material, that's fine. That's something you can generate. But in the course material, if you want to generate code, good. If you want to generate some new information which is with references, forget it. Better go for Google. So we need to see the pros and cons and the areas where the tool has to be used. Being an IT person, yes, we are continuously upgrading our teachers and telling them that something like Microsoft applications, this is another tool which you need to know how it's been used. But it's not a mandatory thing for them. It's not, because we rely more on the human capacity of being innovative and being creative. Yes, we have used it for personalized learning of our faculty, of our students. How did we do that? And this is something I would believe is an innovative way we have achieved using the ChatGPT. We gave again, it's a structural base, because a ChatGPT algorithm says, tell me what's the structure I have to evaluate based on, tell me what is the content, and then bring on what I have to, the content which I need to evaluate. So we gave them, okay, this is our course outline and course outcomes. This is the material which the student has been taught. Now you can evaluate the student. Series of questions are generated one after another. First, it will ask a question which is very basic level. When the student will respond, this is a small algorithm and it's a small prompt we are giving it to the ChatGPT. Student will answer based on the kind of answer and the kind of English the student has used. The ChatGPT will generate the second question, which will be a little more harder for that particular student. Eventually, after the series of 5, max 10 is a lot because the student can't write that much, up to 5 questions, it gives an output at the end for the mentor or the faculty member to see the areas of improvement. There is no grading for the student, and the same tool we are also using for the faculty member, the areas of improvement. So this is the personalized test, we can say, which we have used and we have generated in using this AI. Again, it can be used for personalized learning. It can be used for some kind of descriptive writing, but again, it's the information which it's giving is not reliable at all. So this is where I will rest my 4 minutes. I think I've exceeded. Sorry for my voice.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that first-hand experience with the use of ChatGPT in the classroom. The second round and final round of questions is going to be 2 minutes, and obviously we're going to discuss the ethical considerations of using ChatGPT. So I'm going to go back to you, Dr. Kristen, now, and ask about the ethical considerations in terms of data privacy, the bias associated with content generated by ChatGPT. ChatGPT does not account for cultural and other circumstances surrounding the content that's being produced. So could you elaborate a little bit about that and how can we mitigate these issues?
In 2 minutes. Ready? You're going to hate me because I'm going to actually flip that question in a second. I mean, we know that there's a long laundry list of ethical issues with AI, and AI professionals and experts are right working through this. I have my most sort of serious concerns are really with like corporate interests and the development race, whereby these sort of backstops and testing and all of that gets sort of pushed away in other theaters. But that's, again, trying to keep it back in education. And you're absolutely right that I think, one of the things that we have to be teaching and exploring and identifying explicitly is how bias works. And again, in order to do that, so this is where I'll flip it back, I think we need to think about the ethical responsibilities of the university to its students. Especially like in our context. I mean, that's what we have the most control over. And I think we have several responsibilities there. If we're going to be asking about ethics problems with AI, including language, gender, race bias, we again have to teach students what the tools are, how they function, what their logics are. We need to demystify them so they don't trust content implicitly, so they know what they're putting in and what they're getting out. I've said this before, so we have to teach those things. If we're relying on policing as our primary or only means of addressing AI-generated text, we've already lost the narrative and we've lost the opportunity. And I think we've moved away from our ethical responsibility there. I think it's more important than ever as well, second sort of thing, is to teach the foundations of writing, critical reasoning, evidence-based reasoning, credibility. One thing doesn't replace the other, because if students don't have those foundations, they can't evaluate what they're getting back, right, from AI. So then we're facing skills deficits, we're facing the spread of misinformation, right? So we can head off some of the larger ethical issues of AI, I think, by teaching the students right. Practically, in the university, this means smaller writing classes, for instance, 15 people. In which, then you have much more feedback opportunities for students. You have a much more personal relationship with students. I think this means developing courses in AI ethics, not in one school, but in engineering, in humanities, in business, in sciences. Developing those programs, I think, are absolutely essential to sort of help, I think, meet, like I said, our ethical responsibility to our students surrounding AI. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Could you also elaborate, I kind of missed this question, about the future vision of ChatGPT in terms of interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary, and how can we leverage ChatGPT into the future?
I'll give a short answer here because I think it's also not going to be very satisfying. I don't know. I think that we put too much pressure on tools. As Zainab was saying, it's a tool. And I think what we need to be thinking about are like, okay, how do we use these tools? So it's more about our philosophies of what we're doing. The potential, and I think it's absolutely there for any of these AI tools, the potential for its positive use in education, open education, all of that depends essentially on how we frame its use, how we teach its use, and then how we critically evaluate those tools. So the potential's there, but it's not inherent in the tool. It's how we ourselves are structuring it in the university and then framing it for students.
Thank you very much. Robert, we'll go back to you. Same question.
Again, I'm going to flip the question because as a classroom teacher, I'm way more interested in what originally got me onto the topic of ChatGPT, which was a headline saying that Australian universities were going back to pencil and paper or pen and paper tests because students were using this artificial intelligence to cheat. And we thought, right, what do we do about this? Now, the word I use with my students most often is play with it, and I think it reflects my own attitude towards the thing. You're going to learn by having fun with it. But we wanted to know, how do you stop this? So, first of all, do it as a test. Ask ChatGPT, can you write me a 2,000-word essay on the topic of using seaweed farms to mitigate climate change? Because I have a funny approach to stuff like this. 4 minutes later, 2,000 words, 7 different references, 6 of which were completely fictitious. I tell this story to students all the time to say, you know, we will catch you, because although they know how to tweak the actual product to make it look like it was written by humans, nobody paraphrases their reference list. So it's going to be fictional and very easy to spot as being fictional. We also try and tell them a lot of things about the failures. The thing really cannot count. We got it to write a story about flipping a coin 10 times and what the results would be. It concluded by saying, we got 5 heads and 5 tails, which shows that it's a purely random figure. Unfortunately, heads came up 4 times and tails came up 6 times. ChatGPT can't count as well as a 5-year-old. It used to be used by CNET for publishing articles on basic finance. One of their editors really should get their wrists slapped, because they let articles go out that readers were writing and complaining and saying, you have fundamentally misrepresented what compound interest is. Now, it's a thing I haven't studied in over 55 years, since I was in secondary school, but I think I wouldn't have made the mistakes that the artificial intelligence did. It's an artificial idiot more than it is an intelligence. And if we can train students in how this thing works, as you said, I think we can train them out. We can inoculate them against the idea that they can use this to cheat. We'll enforce ethics by enforcing good practice, by knowledge and by training, and by showing them how it can make them better. Rather than, as you said, by policing them. We will never be able to catch every criminal. We've just got to train them into being law-abiding citizens.
Thank you very much. Dr. Zainab, just a quick, gentle reminder of the question, or the questions, the ethical implications of ChatGPT, and then future trends and the possibility of ChatGPT and AI tools as a strategy for lifelong learning.
I was thinking to go after you. I'm sorry again for my throat. I have a very sore throat. Is it okay if you can do it before me?
Sure. Well, as far as ethical implications, I think it was mentioned in the morning, institutions of higher learning will have to kind of revisit policies and procedures, especially institutions that offer online education. A lot of the curriculum with online courses and online programs is based on this generation of text, essays, quizzes, and so forth, and especially weekly discussions. And so I think it's important for institutions to revisit policies and procedures. And I will go as far as looking at program and course outcomes, also revisiting which courses and which programs need to be redeveloped and restructured to account for emerging technology like artificial intelligence. And so there is talks of tools, we know, Safe Assign, Turnitin, all of these tools that detect plagiarism, and now there is one that detect texts that are written by ChatGPT and so forth. But I think the more important conversation here is not about the punitive side of ChatGPT where we catch students cheating. It's about the emphasis. What do you as an institution emphasize? Is it memorization or recall of information and knowledge which is available on the web? Or is it skill building? Do you build skills for the profession, or do you focus on what students, because knowledge is already readily available through ChatGPT, through Google, and a lot of tools. So what is it that you value the most? And then decisions about policy and practice proceed. So that's, in my opinion, the future vision for academic institutions and how to hold students responsible future global citizens. I think I saw the sign for, was it 5 or 7 minutes? 1 minute? Okay.
I saw the same thing. Okay, I'll try to wrap it up as soon as possible from my side. We are practically using the API of ChatGPT, and we have got a batch of students who are developing these applications. While working with this API, and we gave all the institutional data, and we were making sure that data remains on our private network only. However, again, this is something not directly related to the classroom, but to the institution. Using this data, whichever we are having in our classrooms, student grades, student attendance, student responses, students, these interactions with our online tools, we have seen that there was a specific type of bias which was coming from the ChatGPT because of the data we fed into it. Again, it is algorithm. It's not ChatGPT doing from itself. Whatever the kind of data information it is getting from, okay, I'll give you an example from the research. If from a certain topic, again, I'm not discussing that specific topic, if about a specific topic, the majority of the writers are male, the replies are coming in a male voice rather than having an inclusion of both the genders. If the writers are more Europeans, the Asian voice is not being heard when the information so it's not what the ChatGPT. So this bias is something which we are also teaching, and we are demonstrating each and every example to our students as well, that how ChatGPT can get bias, and they have to look after this one when they are giving the responses. The second part is the data which we are giving is, though it is completely on a secured network, it's not private. So these applications which our students are developing, they are mentioning it, it's not confidential, so do not give any confidential institutional data on these applications. Over here, the privacy issues are coming in. Clearly, they are coming in. So whatever our strategy is, whatever our course material is, as soon as it's uploaded on ChatGPT, we cannot trust on our privacy anymore. The future implications of using this tool it has got a lot of potential, a lot of potential. And until now, we are still working on it with our students, how this API can be used in different places. One example I've already given you, which is invoking a personalized learning, personalized course material, personalized question answers. It can be personalized in many ways. However, as of today, it lacks direct information or accurate information. As you have mentioned, the references, there's no point of referring, even checking out the references, the information, the comparisons, nothing is accurate over there. However, we can use this tool with our data and asking the tool to use this data in a more creative way. This is how where I see the ChatGPT being used today. It is not a replacement of professors. It's not replacement of any human in any way or form. So this is where I'll put my 1 minute.
Thank you, Dr. Zainab, Professor Robert, and Dr. Kristen. At this point, we'll turn it back to the audience. We have about 12 minutes for Q&A or comments, brief comments from the audience.
Thank you very much, everyone. I love the optimism that generally everyone had about ChatGPT. I'm an academic developer myself. Some days I'm very optimistic, some days less so. A lot of what we spoke about was, I guess, new skills that need to be developed, right, to use this particular tool. As I was looking at my notes, I couldn't read my handwriting, and I was reminded of the skills that we've offloaded as tools have come on board as well. Things like spelling, handwriting, the ability to read a long novel. Right? So I'm just wondering, from each of your perspectives, in the field that you teach, whether it's writing or academic development, what would be the cognitive offloading that you think will happen?
I'll give one example. I was a software developer. I started my career as a software developer. And today, if you ask me, you want to become a software developer? No. Again, I don't want to go into the same thing. But yes, the skills are there. The skills of creating algorithm, creating a logic, flowchart, everything is there, which I'm again transferring to my students. What I want to say over here is that, yes, when the calculator came in, a similar kind of resistance was there. Today, the students are saying that that particular skill of calculation is not required anymore. That particular skill of programming is not required anymore. Now, my answer to that question, because I'm not a Gen Z, and the whole thing completely changes when it comes to that topic. My point, which I'm raising over here to my students, is you just learn the skill. I don't care you know the formula or not. I don't care you know the language or not. You just learn the skill. Learn the skill, in your case, writing. Learn the skill of writing. You should know how to evaluate or how to audit whatever the ChatGPT has generated. You should know where the capital letters are coming, grammar is coming, how to generate a creative sentence, how to be a critical thinker. You just need to learn the skill. Which language it is, how it's been written, leave it to the future. You may or may not need it in your future. But today, as a teacher, as a academic integrator and auditor, I would say I want you to just learn the skill. You should know how to add, you should know how to use the formula, and you should know how to evaluate the tool which is generating the answer. Today, we researchers are sitting over here, and we can, just by seeing the reference, tell that this is absolutely, a rubbish reference. It's not even a reference. But the students can't do that. By seeing the reference, they cannot tell as of today that it's an article or it's a book reference or it's an online article. They just need to learn that skill. They do not need to go in that depth. Yeah, please.
I was just going to say, I think, and what you're doing is sort of reframing what we mean by skill, right? Spelling. Is it only a skill if you can do it without any help? Like, in what areas do we need that? Or is it a skill because you can write your Word document, effectively use spell check to spell correctly? Isn't that also a skill, right? So I think reframing what we mean by skills, which is what, in some ways, what you're doing, is important, as well as, I mean, those are sort of the basic skills, but when we're thinking about like how to do reference lists, right, you can't totally turn that over. They have to know the foundational logics of what a reference list is, or whatever it might be, or programming. Yes, I think programming is more and more going to be AI-assisted. Does that mean that programs don't? No, they're doing it in a different way, right? Like they're reapproaching this skill in new ways. So I think it's always sort of this back and forth between how do we effectively use the tool to enhance our skills, and how do we value that, I guess.
I hope that satisfies him. It doesn't look like he's satisfied with the answer. We can discuss it after. No worries.
I just have another question on what are the alternative tools? Because I know there are a lot of tools that's available for the last 5-10 years. Why we talk about ChatGPT now?
Okay, there are alternative tools, and I have a very long list of them, a very, very long list. And these tools are, I would say, I'm not going to name them now in this particular. You can contact me directly for that one. For referencing, for researching, each and every item you need, you name it, and the tool is there, which is more better than ChatGPT. ChatGPT is more descriptive. And since this panel discussion is only about ChatGPT, so I'll rest the topic on this one. But if you are trying to raise a point that there are other tools which we need to bring into the education, yes, you are right. They are AI-based, yes, and they are better than ChatGPT also.
We have Jasper, we have Brand, there are hundreds of tools. So
Correct.
I don't understand why ChatGPT now.
Because it seems like it talks.
Is,
it's conversational.
Yes.
I think because it seems like it talks. It seems like it knows things, right? Like it has this sort of
so awareness for everyone that there's another tools out there. Sure.
Thank you so much for the brilliant conversation. I just wanted to ask the role of the government in this discussion after you raised the issue with the policy. So education policy. Right now, I'm a professor of design management, and my junior students are working in the project of Future of Work in an ethical AI certificate program. So we know, for instance, Italy has banned, and the rise of VPN use in Italy raised enormous after banning ChatGPT for the classroom. So there are always alternatives. How it's going to be framed, I'm very optimistic for the standing point of UAE, since we have a Minister of AI here. And do you have any kind of best examples in this regard, in the kind of how governments are approaching to this topic, which is going to shape the education policy? Thank you.
If I may, a friend of mine is working at a university in China, and they may have changed the policy because things change very quickly nowadays, but until recently, ChatGPT was completely banned in China. Now, this is probably partly because they're developing their own version, which will work in Chinese and be better for them, but it's also just they didn't want anything to do with it. And he, as a university teacher, was saying he thought this was a terrible idea, and he thought the way they'd handled COVID-19 was a good analogy. First, ban the thing from the country, and then realize you can't do that, open up and have millions and millions of cases because you were not prepared. You didn't know how to deal with that correctly. And he said, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to go for a long time and then realize that we have to actually engage with the technology, with AI, but we don't know how to because we just stopped using it. Nobody touched it, not students, not lecturers, not anybody. And I think it is way better to be in a situation such as what we find ourselves, where we can play with it and find out the limits and the strengths of it and where we will use it. I think imagination is the true limit on this thing, and you don't get to use the expanse of your imagination in a vacuum. You have to actually engage with the thing and see what sparks the next thought, the next question that you have to answer with it.
I don't think governments, I would not comment on government policies, but I don't think governments around the world have had, this is a 6-year-old child, I don't think, 6 months old child, referring to ChatGPT. I don't think governments have had enough time to do a market analysis, to do a risk assessment of what is the implication of ChatGPT on academic institutions, to come up with policies, at least to my knowledge. I think it's still work in progress. I did hear that it was banned in Italy a few weeks ago, but that's about it.
UNESCO has published a general report, just for the introduction.
Yeah, I think New York State schools banned it as well. Just same thing, concerned about people cheating with it. It's very short-sighted.
So just bear with me for this beginning part. But University of Newcastle in Australia had a very unique way of choosing their medical students. That was based on emotional intelligence, not on academic prowess. And I think over time it's proven to be very successful. I'm not absolutely certain of that. But the point I wanted to make here was that I think it's going to be completely losing battle. I remember looking at Windows 3.0 when it was black and white. And when you look at the level of refinement that has occurred to Windows, which was known as the deadly blue screen because it always crashed, but rarely does it crash nowadays. It's extremely robust. And I think to talk about, footnoting and so on now, it's going to advance so fast. I'm not even talking about 20 years, 5, 10 years, and every job will be affected by it. Academic, if you think that you're sitting in a safe place, it's going to revolutionise. It's going to be probably the biggest revolution of many years. The point I want to make about the University of Newcastle is that I think that one of the solutions is there's no way we're going to be able to control students using ChatGPT, whether it's Italy or any other country tries to ban it. I think the best way to do it is to use the Plato and Aristotle form of dialectic, which is to put the student in front of you and say, here is a particular scenario, explain to us how you would go about resolving this. And if the student just sits there numb, which he or she will have done if they'd just been playing around with ChatGPT, then you know that the person probably deserves a failure or to come back and have another go at it. So I think there will be solutions around how to deal with it, but it'll be based on thinking, not based on submitting an assignment and it looks pretty impressive. Because even now, I was going through my PhD and putting sections in and checking it, testing it out to see if I could refine it. And I was quite impressed, and I do believe it can be very creative. I mean, for example, I've been learning Japanese, so I started to put different variations of particles so I could learn particles. It gave me, first of all, it gave me the same particle test. So I said, no, I need variation in order to learn Japanese particles. The number of different variations it gave me was extraordinary. So to say it's not creative, it might be based on a very complex level of algorithms, but it is creative. Believe me, just like a human being, but we're not quite there yet. So remember Windows 3.0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes this discussion. I want to thank my colleagues here on the stage, Dr. Noureen and her team for holding this reflective conversation, and AUS for this multi-institutional conference. Thanks, everyone.